So, big day is here. Premier League is back. And I've got some predictions, which I will also take a picture of and post. Probably going to be very wrong, but I'll give some logic to my thoughts. This is how I think the league table is going to play out. So, I will go from bottom to top. So, I think Luton will finish bottom, newly promoted side. They've got some good players, They do have some good players. Ryan Giles actually is from the town I'm from, and last season put in the most crosses in the Championship playing for Middlesbrough. Very, very exciting attacking fullback. Definitely going to be in the England squad in the future. I don't know him personally, but good representation of Telford as a town. Unfortunately, I do think they're going to be bottom. Him personally, I think he'll get a move to a higher team. I don't want to write them off. The Premier League's tough. It's all about their home form. They got to make it a tough place to go. Small ground, enclosed. Got to be physical. Use their set pieces. Again, Giles will come in. Got great delivery. But I do just think the Premier League is quick, man, and the teams can cope physically and play good football. And I just think they're going to end up coming unstuck and finishing bottom. There's no shame. Ross Barkley's a good signing for them as well, though. Creative spark could be. Be interesting to see how he does. Be interesting to see how fit he is, because I did see somewhere he didn't play a lot of minutes in France last season. 19th, I think it's going to be Wolves. I think Wolves are going to finish 19th and go down. They finished 13th last season. Just changed manager. Lopetegu's left after 9 months in charge, replaced by Gary O'Neill 3 days before the season started. Crazy. O'Neill done great at Bournemouth last season. Worked miracles with them, keeping them up. They spent a bit of money in the January, but he done a good job. He's a good manager. It's nothing against him. It's just they've lost. They've lost a lot of good players. Haven't really bought any. Don't have goals in the team. Not the most solid at the back. It just didn't look good from last year. The change of manager kept him up. Lopetegu's good manager. I can see him at least struggling to start with, and then maybe change a manager, and it could work. Who knows? But I can see him finishing 19th. Third and final relegated team, I think it's going to be another newly promoted team, Sheffield United. Finished second in the Championship last year. Again, they've lost one of their best players in Ndiaye, and I think it'll be down to the home form. But these days, you try to be physical at home. It doesn't work because the teams are just good, but they're also physical. The big boys have also got physical players that can play. And I think that they'll just finish 18th. They just won't have enough quality. Losing and does not work for them. It's okay. I'm just looking on my iPad now. 17th, I think it's going to be last season's winners of the Championship, Burnley, under Vincent Kompany. They play good football. People are expecting it. Even people I've already spoke to. Opening game tonight. It's going to be tough for City. Burnley, tough place to go. Physical. They're not under Kompany. They try to play football. In fact, I think City will probably spank them tonight. But in general, I think they'll surprise a few. They'll do well. I was debating putting them a bit higher up, but then I just thought might lack a bit of the quality in attack. But I do think they will have enough to stay up. Exciting team. 16th, I think, is going to be Fulham. Finished 10th last year. Now, this is depending on Mitrovic, who apparently is going to leave and wants to leave. They signed Raul Jimenez, who, since his head injury, has not looked himself. Very good goalkeeper in Leno. Was key last year. They conceded the most expected goals in the league, but didn't concede that amount because of Leno. This year, I don't think they can sustain that. They'll probably concede more. Mitrovic missed games, did score goals. If he stays, I'll maybe change that. But based on Mitrovic going, it's hard to make the predictions for transfer windows finish. But based on Mitrovic going, I think Fulham will drop down to 16th. They'll still stay up. They'll be fine. But I just think teams will figure out how they play as well. So even with Mitrovic staying, it won't be as effective. It'll be effective enough to stay in the league. That's their aim, really. 15th, I think, is going to be Nottingham Forest. A lot of people tipping them to struggle and go down. Now, I know 15th doesn't look great, but, I mean, it's not close to going down. I think the points will be close in general. But I don't think that's... I think they've done so well to stay up after signing a whole squad that they're only going to be better. And, in fact, if anything, I think it's 15th or higher for them. Awayini, however you say it, sorry, signed from Liverpool. Back end of the season, started scoring goals. Think he takes that into next season. Gibbs White, always involved in what they do. He's only going to get better because of his age. He's, he's coming into his prime. Their goalkeeper situation, Matt Turner, I'm not the biggest fan, but I think, last season they finished 16th. I think they'll climb a place, finish 15th, stay up comfortably. Good manager as well, like Steve Cooper. 14th, I think, is going to be Bournemouth. Last season finished 15th under Gary O'Neill, done really well, as mentioned. But were ruthless in getting rid of him for Iraola, who done an amazing job at Rayo Vallecano. Good record against the big teams. Beat Barca 3 times and drew with them. Got a win against Madrid as well. Good manager. Bournemouth last year done well to stay up without being a pressing team, and he'll make them that. He'll make them harder to play against. And they already had the quality to stay up. Philip Billings key again. Alex Scott's a great signing. To be honest, I was half thinking with this new manager they might struggle. But then I look at what they've signed and the manager's record, and I think, I think they'll be okay comfortably. 14th. 13th, I think, will be Everton. Hope they go down as a Liverpool fan. Good to have the derby, but I always say you can't keep coming close to going down. Eventually, it's going to catch up with you, but they've done well. They've got Sean Dyche in, who will stabilise. He kept them up, and he's got a good track record of keeping teams in the Premier League, and I think he'll just do that. A lot depends on Calvert-Lewin staying fit to whether they can aspire to push the top half, but I think they will stay up. Home form will be key again. They do have good players. Everton, I'm sure it's the last season at Goodison as well. Surely they're not going to go down in their last season at Goodison. Can see them finishing 13th. 12th, I think, will be West Ham. Last season finished 14th. Struggled because they were in the Europa Conference League. But ended up a good season because they ended up winning it, qualifying for the Europa League and staying in the Prem. I can't see him struggling as much being in the Europa League because even though it's a higher competition, I do actually think they might go out earlier. And at the same time, that'll aid them in the league. They've signed well to replace Rice and will sign more. I know they've not signed plenty, but Maguire, James Ward-Prowse and Alvarez, good signings. Maguire and Alvarez linking up at set pieces, going to be an issue. And I just think, they'll have a better year. Possibly lack quality up front. Depends a lot on if Danny Ings stays fit. He's got goals in him, but I think they'll be comfortable. Finish 12th. Was torn between sort of West Ham, Palace, Brentford, maybe even Tottenham, and them teams. They're all capable of going either way. So I've just gone with what I think. Probably going to be way wrong. But 11th, I think, is going to be Palace. And then I looked, and they actually finished 11th last year. But they were good under Vieira, then had a dip and looked like they could go down. Replaced him with Hodgson and went back to being good, which I think would have probably happened under Vieira anyway. I think they would have ended up around the mid-table mark. And I just think under the experienced Roy Hodgson with the players they have, they will again. Don't rely on Zaha anymore, but Eze and Elise are quality. If they lose Elise, could struggle, but I just think there's a few teams worse. So getting into the top half, mid-table, I think it's going to be Brentford. Finished 9th last year. I think they're going to finish 10th this year. Tottenham was either way. I think no even Tony until January might hurt him. I know they've done okay without him at when his ban started. I think they might struggle for goals first half of the season. Might even struggle in the first half of the season, but then he'll come back, start firing. Even if he takes a few games to get going, even just his hold-up play will help, and they'll climb. Or they'll just be steady. They're a good team, well-organised, good manager, well-run. I think they'll just be comfortably mid-table, no danger of going down. 9th, I think it's going to be Tottenham, because Harry Kane's going, and I can't see who they replace him with. And to be honest, I debated putting them lower, possibly swapping them with Brentford. Last season, they finished 8th with Harry Kane scoring 30 goals. Now, you take that out of the team and straight away you say, okay, they're way worse. However, Postecoglou's going to come in and play a different brand of football. They've signed Maddison. They're going to play more expansive. They do have good players, so they're not going to be dreadful. But they will struggle to replace Kane, and the squad's not the deepest. Not having Europe could benefit them, but I think it's just a year for the manager to adapt as well. So see what happens there, but I think they're going to finish 9th. 8th, I think, is going to be Brighton. Yeah. Brighton, they finished 6th last year. They've lost, obviously, McAllister. They're going to lose Caicedo, it looks like. They've signed well, but the thing with them, very good manager, very well organised. The way they play football, it just works. However, they are also in the Europa League now, so it's more games. It's unknown territory for them. So I just think that all it'll mean is I'll finish 8th, which will be a very good season for them, considering they'll be in the Europa League. And I think that they could do well in that. If they weren't in the Europa League, I'd fancy them to maybe push top 5, top 4. Because they're in the Europa League, I just think they'll finish 8th, which is a good season for Brighton, that'd be. 7th, I think, is going to be Aston Villa for the 2nd year in a row. And to be fair to Aston Villa, they're another team who've signed really well. Emery is a good manager, rate him really high. Thought he was treated a bit unfairly at Arsenal. It's ended up working out okay for Arsenal as well, of course. But Villa done very well to get him from Villarreal, ironically, who were in the Champions League semi-final not long before he went to Aston Villa. And they've signed really well, they've got money. I can't see Europe affecting them as much because they're in the Europa Conference League and they've got a manager who is just amazing at navigating Europa League king. In fact, they're not a bad shout to win the Europa Conference League. Finishing 7th for them in a season, being in Europe again, would be very good. And then if they can go on top of that and win the Europa Conference League as well, to qualify for the Europa League, great season. Another team that if they weren't in Europe this year, but managed to sign who they had with the manager they've got, I'd probably fancy them to push Champions League. Good team. 6th, I think it's going to be Newcastle, to be honest. They finished 4th last season. And, they finished 4th last season. Amazingly well to overachieve under Eddie Howe. Great manager, by the way. Really love Eddie Howe, future England manager. Without spending too much, considering what everyone's saying about the fact they're owned by Saudis, without spending loads, they've gone from relegation candidates to jumping into the Champions League. However, that might affect him. They've signed well, but they can't spend loads because of FFP. So I think the Champions League might come a little bit too early for him. Be good experience. Could even do okay in the Champions League, but it will affect their league form. And like the other teams I've mentioned with the not as deep squads, finishing 6th while being in the Champions League, good season. And if they drop into the Europa, they could have a run in that. The last year that teams will drop into the Europa, let's not forget. And 6th will get them Europe again. And that's all they need at the minute. Consistently qualify for Europe. Make more money so they can spend more money. 5th, I think, is going to be Chelsea. Last year for Chelsea, absolute disaster. Finished 12th. But I've seen Chelsea finish 10th and then win the league. Pochettino's a good manager. Got good players. They've looked okay in pre-season. They may still slightly lack goals. And Nkunku's good. But then he's injured for the start of the season. But then no Europe and a good manager who knows the league. It's not like Tottenham's new manager who doesn't know the league. Of course he knows it, but he's not managed in it. I think will be enough for him to get 5th, which you'd say, that's massive progress, but their aim is to top 4. But 5th might get them Champions League, let's not forget. And their aim is just to get back in the Champions League. I think they'll be okay, Chelsea. So getting into the top 4, but let's not forget, top 5 might get Champions League, so we'll work on the basis that it's going to be top 4, but I think it's going to be top 5 anyway, so, the top 5, I think, are just all comfortably in the Champions League. Chelsea back in it, Liverpool back in it, because I've obviously not mentioned them yet. Man United, I think, are going to finish 4th. They finished 3rd last year, and they had a good season. Won a cup as well, of course. First season under Ten Hag. Spent money, which they always do. But I just think because the Europa League, they should have done better in. The higher quality opposition in the Champions League and not being able to rotate as much might catch them out. And they still, I think, will lack the goals. Rashford will still be their main source. can't put too much pressure on the new kid. But for them, it's about sustaining Champions League and building. So if they can finish 4th, but have a couple of runs in the cups, maybe win a cup again, it's a good season for them. They'll want a title push, but I just don't think they have the squad and the quality. Okay at the back, but Varane gets injured. Midfield's good, but if Casemiro gets injured, then they seem like they just seem soft. And Arna's a good goalkeeper, really changes how they play. But I just think the teams above him have got more about him, because I think Liverpool will finish 3rd. Now, last season finished 5th, but everyone knows lacking in midfield, seem to have addressed that. But the rest of the squad is pretty good. Got goals in them, probably got the most depth in attack in the league. They will not struggle for goals. And if anything, last year their problem was they didn't beat the teams that you'd say they should, the bottom half. So this year it looks like they'll just go firepower for that, and then in the big games look to be solid, and they've signed midfielders. I think it'd be too much of a push for him to get top 2, because they're still lacking a bit of depth at the back, and because of the new system, not fully adapted to coping with teams attacking them down the right and over the top. And I think that'll cost them in terms of pushing for the title. But again, getting back into the Champions League, the main, which I think top 5 will do, but I think they'll get 3rd anyway. They won't bank on it being top 5. They'll aim for top 4, and I think they'll get 3rd. But then they could do well in the Europa, could even win it, which also gets you in the Champions League, could win a cup. You know, the main aim for them is getting back in the Champions League, and I think they will. I think they'll finish 3rd. But they get them, United, you know, like I said, it was tough mid-table between, like, Tottenham, Brentford, Palace, and then Brighton, Villa, Newcastle found it tough. Chelsea could go either way, because I do think, again, new manager, a lot of new players. I've said 5th, could be 8th, could be 12th again. Don't know. But with Liverpool, I just think most of them will get back at it, and they'll be all right. But not to the point where they'll be dominant with City again and just be them two battling for the title, but to the point where you can't really, there's not much between them, United, Arsenal, maybe Chelsea. And Tottenham would have been in there if they kept Harry Kane. On to 2nd place then, which also obviously gives you my title prediction. I think Arsenal will come 2nd. It'll be a good season for him. People are saying, oh, well, they've spent loads, bought loads, and came 2nd last year. They came 2nd to the treble winners. You have to respect Man City, who have ended up not losing as many players as we thought and have signed well. And yes, they've signed well, but these players need to adapt. They're building the team. They're still young. A lot of people also think they might get a lot worse, which I don't agree with, because good teams don't do that, and they're clearly a good team. They're coming into it together. They're building something. They're on the right path. Wouldn't surprise me if they win the league over the next few years, but I just think this year, being back in the Champions League will set them back in the league. But it won't set them back in terms of they'll still finish 2nd, but they want to win the league. But good season for them. They'll challenge for the title again. I think they'll do well in the Champions League as long as they get a good draw in the group. And that's a good season for them. You know, I know they've spent money and they want to win a cup. They want to win something, but everyone spends money and all these squads are good. And I just think the champions will be Man City again. A few are saying no one's ever won it 4 in a row, so that might work against them. Treble might work against them because of complacency. I don't think Pep allows that. And I think, like I say, because they've not lost as many as before. It looks like Walker's staying. Looks like Bernardo's staying. Signing well. Kovacic, Paqueta. It looks like he's coming. Haaland is only going to get better, let's not forget. De Bruyne had his odd injury problems last year. Didn't play as much as he'd like. He's probably going to have a better season, let's be real. They won the treble last year. I don't think they're going to win the treble. So automatically, they've not had as good a season as the year before, but they're too good, man. They'll win the league. I think. I do really think they will. Yeah, that's my Premier League predictions for 2023-2024.